just have a quick chat this evening. Thanks to the PTA for inviting us along, the school for opening up, and for everybody who volunteered and put their name down to be on that PTA committee as well for this year. Thank you a lot. It's a lovely school. We're really pleased to be involved with it here, and it's a lot to do with the parents and the teachers that are involved here. So while I had the opportunity, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. I have got a 30-minute time limit. I'm going to stick to that tonight. And I'm just going to touch on a few things through here. But before I get on to that, I should just introduce myself properly. So that's the main reason that I'm here. So first and foremost for me, I'm a dad. I've got Jack's now in second class, and we've got the twins here, Sammy and Alfie, started junior infants this year. And a lot of you probably know my wife Jen. She's been pretty active around the school as well. So for some of you, I'm probably the other half of that, which you haven't seen for quite a while. But outside of this, which is the most important thing for me, I've been really fortunate that a lot of my time from a work point of view has been spent in sport and education and training. So I am a trained PE teacher, not from around here obviously, taught in Brisbane for a while, and then I've had a lot of different roles with different sporting organisations and sporting teams, mainly in rugby, but also some jobs in third level institutions, and things like that. And currently I'm very lucky, I'm head of coach development for Irish Rugby, and that's what brought us over here, and that's what's my job at the moment. So I spend a lot of time working with our pro coaches and things like that, but importantly and most relevance through all of this, I spend a lot of time working with coaches of kids and writing curriculums and coaching programs to help parents, mums and dads and junior coaches better understand how they can communicate and work with children to get the most out of them. I was doing that before I had kids and had an interest in it, and then once we had Jack and we started, and then we had bang bang 2 in a row, we have our children now. A lot of what I learnt in terms of coaching and helping teachers and parents, I've actually started to adapt and change the way that I father and speak to the kids as well, as a result of things that I've learnt through work. So there's 3 big things I was going to touch on tonight that have really influenced me from the opportunities I've had through work, and it is a constant for me in what I do as far as a dad goes. And I'm going to say I'm not a psychologist, I'm not pretending to be anything I'm not. These are just 3 areas for me, based on what I've done and what I do, that are most influential for me, and things that stay in my mind when I'm working at work, and then I'm also at home. And that is around the idea of what I can do as a dad to help develop growth mindset, meeting motivational needs, and encouraging movement. So what I'm going to do just briefly tonight is touch on each of these to give a little bit of an understanding on what it is, and then some tips for anyone who might be interested on where to get more information on it or how to use it. Each of these areas alone are massive areas. So for example, I'd be really fortunate around motivation, would run sort of 3-4 hour workshops with coaches and everything just on that topic alone. So we are only going to scratch the surface on some of these. And I'm also fully aware that there'll be a lot of people here with a lot more expertise in some of these areas than me as well. So I'm not professing to know it all, and if you do have things you want to share, please make sure you do as we go through. The first one I'm going to touch on there is this idea then around mindset, and it's not an uncommon term. A lot of you would be aware of it. I know it's something the school does as well. They have some really cool posters around. If you get around the classrooms, you can see that as well. But in terms of mindset in the context that we're talking about tonight, this is the idea of how people in general view talent, skill and ability. And in defining it this way, people would typically either have a view that that is fixed. I have this talent or I don't, for example. I'm smart or I'm not. Or if talent or if mindset is a growth mindset, it's more of an idea that that can be developed. I can get smarter. I can get faster. So there's 2, in this context, distinct sort of thoughts around this idea of mindset. And I'll give it a bit of an indication in the psychology behind it shortly. But dependent upon the mindset, that would shape the way that a person or an individual would approach a problem or a situation. So let's say that a person is faced with a challenge, whatever that might be. Someone with a fixed mindset is unlikely to take on that challenge because they are afraid of failing. Because if they believe that they are smart, for example, if they do something too hard and fail at it, all of a sudden that means they're not smart anymore. So they lose that identity that they thought they had. Whereas somebody with the growth mindset will see challenge as an opportunity to learn and get better. If we look at other things in relation to difficult situations, same thing. Fixed mindset will not want to challenge themselves. A growth mindset will look to challenge themselves. So that's a basic understanding of the different sort of mindsets through there. In relation to effort, someone with a fixed mindset won't be as likely to put in as much effort as someone with a growth mindset. In relation to failure, a fixed mindset will be afraid of failing. A growth mindset will see failure as an opportunity to learn and get better. So that's a bit of a distinction between the two through there. And it all stems from this book, and the psychologist who published this is called Carol Dweck. If you're interested, you can get that book anywhere. There's lots of really good talks online that you can see her speaking about it directly herself, and also now some good websites there as well. So if you are interested, you could just throw mindset or Carol Dweck into the search engine and a heap of stuff would pop up. It's one of my favourite books, and I'm just going to share one of the key paragraphs out of it that really got me thinking about how I would communicate and talk to my children. And I'll read it out for you there because that's a little bit small. But parents think they can hand children permanent confidence like a gift by praising their brains and talent. It doesn't work, and in fact it has the opposite effect. It makes children doubt themselves as soon as anything is hard or anything goes wrong. If parents want to give their children a gift, the best thing they can do is to teach their children to love challenge, be intrigued by mistakes, enjoy effort, and keep on learning. That way, the children don't have to be slaves of praise. They will have a lifelong way to build and repair their own confidence. And this really hit home with me because I would have been the dad who was liking to praise a lot because I just naturally thought it was a really good thing. So if one of the boys would have done really well, say academically, I'd be, oh Jack, you're really smart, well done. Because I was seeing that as my way of connecting with him and encouraging him. Or, oh, you were really fast playing sport today, good work. But what I didn't realise that by saying that, I was actually building them up in a way that the first time that they weren't actually smart, or the first time that they weren't actually fast, their self-reflection would be, I'm not smart anymore, or I'm not fast anymore. So what I did, and what I still try to do, and I'm by no means perfect at it, is I try to now focus on things that are going to be more along that growth mindset idea to get them more comfortable in challenge and accepting of failure, and less around that fixed mindset side of things. One practical example, I suppose, for me, and this is a common thing for anyone that would have more than one child, is you very quickly come unstuck when you say one thing about one when they compare against the others. So our boys love their sport, and the twins, Sammy and Alfie, for us. Sammy's he's a good runner, he's pretty quick, and Alfie's not, unfortunately, which he really struggles with. But I have to be really careful because to encourage him I can't say, don't worry buddy, you're fast. Because every time he tries to play tag against his brother, he can't catch him. He knows he's not fast. So what I need to do is to look at my language and talk to him and go, good job buddy, you're getting faster. So one of the best sayings around this idea of mindset is, becoming is better than being. So rather than being smart, becoming smarter is better. Rather than being fast, becoming faster is better. Whatever it is you're striving to achieve, if you can be looking at it that way, it can be a really constructive way just to change your language a little bit, which can open up a whole new interpretation for not just children, not just your children, but everyone that you're working with. So some tips, and there's heaps, but I just wanted to make sure there was something practical to take away from this conversation here. If you're looking to foster this growth mindset in people that you're working with more so than that fixed mindset, a good tip is to pay attention to the effort over the result. That's going to encourage straight away that idea that the effort's the important bit. Keep working at it, the challenge. You might fail, that's okay, keep going. So if someone comes home with a really good report card or with a student of the week or something like that, excellent, you must have worked really hard to get that result. For example, rather than just going to what I would have done previously, very smart, well done. Can you be looking for the effort and emphasising that? Hand in hand with that is the opportunity to catch out people who are being persistent. I know what I tend to do, or used to do, was because you're so busy doing lots of things and managing lots of different children and everything else, you tend to only look at the end result of what they were doing, if it was putting a jigsaw puzzle together or reading a book or something. But try to keep an eye out for acts of them being persistent and working hard to achieve what it is they wanted to achieve. Because it ties into that first point there. If you can do that, then in the moment you could acknowledge all those really positive aspects of the growth mindset and foster that development through that. Encourage that healthy sort of attitude to challenge and failure. This is a big one for me in my world for a sporting context that we're still fighting and we're only just starting to shift there. Failure in a sporting aspect is seen as a really negative thing. Obviously, because teams at the professional level obviously want to win. If they don't win, that's a failure. But what I find is some coaches who don't understand this concept then is that they have a really poor attitude to failure at their training sessions. So in that context, that means that their players who are training, who should be trying new things and getting better, aren't prepared to do that and take those risks because they might fail. And the coach doesn't accept failure. So they do things in a comfort zone that are really safe and really easy, and they don't actually learn and develop as a result. So if you can encourage and embrace that failure and challenge are good things and that needs to happen, that can help foster that growth mindset as well. We talked about becoming is better than being, and an easy one there is yet that you can add on your sentences as well. Daddy, I can't do that. Well, you can't do it yet. If you keep working and keep trying, eventually that'll come along. So yet can be a really useful word to throw into your vocabulary if you want to be fostering this side of things here. And then finally, try to be that positive growth mindset model yourself. Okay, it's very easy for us to slip into habits as well. So for example, I'm not very good at languages, I'm not very good at music. If the boys ask me around those things, not very good yet. Exactly. The thing that probably I would have said previously would have been, oh, I'm just not good at it. Whereas now I check myself and go, I didn't practice enough, or I didn't work hard enough. So then I'm starting to model the language and the words that I want them to be fostering. I might go through 3 sections because I'm conscious of time, but if there's any questions at the end, I can do my best to try to answer or point those along. The second one that's really stuck with me then is this idea around motivation. I touched on that one earlier. I've been talking a lot, so I'm interested in some of your thoughts through here. So think about an activity that one of your children like to do. It could be playing sport, reading books, building Legos, video games, riding bikes, whatever it might be. Pick that activity and tell me why they do it. I want to try to get a bit of a list on the board here. I'm going to aim for this whiteboard. I'm going to aim for 5 things on a list. There's no right or wrong answers.
How do they do it?
Enjoy it.
Enjoyment. Perfect.
Killing boredom.
So fascinating what they can do with it. Lego.
Yep.
Fun. Does that sound fun?
No, we'll throw it up. There's a difference there, I think.
Curiosity.
Curious. Anything else? We're on a roll now.
New skills, learning a skill.
Yeah.
More confident.
Proud of the results. Pride. Yeah.
Everybody else is doing it.
Very true. They like how it makes them feel.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, attention seeking. Relaxation.
Perfect, very good list with some very messy writing, apologies for that. We're going to come back to this list in a minute. So this idea around motivation for me, so just to make sure we're all sort of understanding and on the same page, we talk about motivation. It's that idea of the reasons for why we do things and what motivation is really good for. It helps us strive for success, it's persistent, it's what makes us do what we do and why we keep doing it as a general sort of definition through there. Most of us would be really comfortable in understanding what motivation is. That's not difficult whatsoever. One aspect that I do want to share is that there's 2 main types of motivation that we mightn't be aware of. The first one is this idea of intrinsic or internal motivation. So that's when anyone is motivated to do things for intrinsic or internal reasons. So like it says up here, performing an activity for its own sake. So those sort of things that would be intrinsic motivators Might be things like enjoyment, getting better, improving, learning, being part of a team, helping others, socialising, those sorts of things. Things that are important to me internally and that I control and I get out of it. The second type of motivation then is obviously going to be extrinsic or external motivation. So that's motivation to perform an activity to earn something external. So it might be a reward or a punishment, for example. Those sorts of examples are results, trophies, praise, fame, money, rewards, and those sorts of things. So within that whole category of motivation, we can think of it as being those two main types. If we go back to the list that we put up here, where do most of these fit if we have to split them between internal and external? Pretty heavily intrinsic, isn't it? And that's usually what the case is. Most people are doing things for intrinsic reasons. Yet when we first think about motivating someone else, where do we tend to go to? Reward. So my main message tonight around motivation was just to open our eyes to that fact that a lot of people are intrinsically motivated to be doing what they're doing for these reasons and many, many more. Yet, with all good intentions, we often try to motivate to get more results or better results, and we do it through using these sort of external mechanisms. And it's just something to be aware of and something to think about because there is a mismatch there. Now, both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation does get results. They're both really positive in changing behaviours. But what the research shows through sport, through studying business, through studying learning as well, is that intrinsic motivation is far, far superior than what extrinsic is. So the challenge is, can we then behave in a way that we're fostering and developing and allowing people to fulfil intrinsic motivation instead of thinking that we have to always provide these external motivators in there? And the one big thing, I'll jump to it actually, in relation to these tips is the idea that using external motivation can actually negate and take away some of those intrinsic motives that we have. And the best way that I can explain that idea is through an old fable. And bear with me, it's a little bit of a story, but the message makes sense. So there was a man that lived in the middle of a village and a beautiful lawn out the front. Beautiful, pristine lawn. So good that one day all the local kids from the town came and started to play soccer out the front. He didn't know how to get rid of them. Okay, they were coming day after day after day. And then he came up with an idea. So one day he went out and said, "Excellent, thank you very much for playing on my front lawn. Here's $5 for each of you." Kids were like, happy days, $5. €5, I should say. Okay, went away. Came back the next day. The man comes out on day number 2. "Thank you for playing on my lawn. Here's $3 for everybody. €3 for everybody." They're like, "Oh, it's not too bad." Kept playing. Come back the third day, the man comes out again. "Thank you for playing. Here's €1. €1. 2 days ago, we're getting €5 for playing here. Now you're going to give us $1. We're going to go and take our game somewhere else. So something that they were doing for intrinsic reasons, fun, socialising, getting better. When an external motivation came in, which was money, it shifted their reason behind why they were doing things. So just be aware that sometimes that external motive, which comes from a really, really good place, might actually thwart some of the original motivation that was there, in our case, motivating our children to do what they do and do what they like. The second common example, and this is actually to throw back to Carol Dweck from her book, talks about learning a musical instrument and how it was a father in this example, his daughter had taken up violin. And he was really wanting to make sure that she was practicing as much as she could. So he decided that he'd set a rule that an hour a day, if she could practice an hour a day, or an hour a week, let's say, I think it was, get an ice cream. So there was a reward put in place. What do you think happened to the quality of her practice for that 60 minutes? It declined rapidly. Because what was now the focus for her in that 60 minutes of violin practice? To get to the end of the hour to go and get the ice cream. So the quality of the practice declined, the whole purpose for the practice went away, and now, by that external motivator, everything that had driven her to want to learn the violin in the first place had been shifted and taken away. Now they're just case studies and they're just examples. It's not always the case. And there's a lot we could dive into in relation to all of that aspect of it. But the main thing I wanted to mention in the short time we have is it's just some of those things to be aware of. And if I had to try to give some tips there, think about providing an environment where already motivated people can thrive. So once again, if I go back to my world and particularly looking at professional sport, a lot of the times those players are motivated originally by intrinsic things. Wanting to get better is a prime one, okay? Continually improving, being the best version of them they can be. Yet those environments tend to overlay external motivators like bonus payments and trophies and all of those things. So what we get a lot of our coaches to try to do is, can they fulfill or create an environment that players can fulfill their own motivation? Because coaches are the creators of the environment, and the environment controls the behaviour. Just like in the home, the parents are the creators of the environment. The second one there, where possible, I'd suggest try to limit the use of external rewards or punishments as a motivational strategy. I say limit because it is really, really hard, okay? Particularly when it's trying to prevent poor behaviour. And I still do this a lot, and Jen can attest to this. You know, you need to pack this up or else you're going to lose, or this toy will go in the bin, or you're going to miss out on the story tonight, okay? I'm not saying you have to get rid of all of that. The area I think we can, though, is not use them to be reinforcing things that are going well already. That's the area I think that we can all improve in that aspect. In terms of changing behaviour to stop things, that's tough. Punishment still does work as a motivation, so I'm not going to say stop doing it. And the last one there, as I mentioned at the start there, that just be aware that those external factors can influence the internal. Once again, there's lots of great books and websites and videos all around that for anyone who's interested. This is a theory for me that sits within intrinsic motivation. I could dive into that, but I won't because it gets a little bit complicated. But if you wanted to know a little bit more, it talks about meeting basic psychological needs. So we know physiological needs like water and food and all of those sorts of things. This talks about everybody as a human having basic psychological needs of autonomy, of mastery, of confidence and relatedness, and how we can look to fulfill those. The last thing for me then is to touch on movement. And why, I'm going to confess, I do love sport. I've always loved sport, but I've learned a lot more about the benefits of it through the roles and responsibilities that I've had. And I just want to share some of that information tonight to finish this up. Why do I think movement and physical activity is really important? Well, this isn't why I think, this is what a lot of the research is suggesting. There's obviously a lot of benefits to physical activity for anybody who's involved, but obviously we're talking predominantly about children through here. And there's lots of health benefits. That's very obvious to most of us. We associate health benefits to physical activity. That makes sense. That's in relation to growth and development, physical fitness, reduced chance of disease, unhealthy weight gain, all of those sorts of things. But some areas of physical activity benefits we mightn't be aware of that are shown time and time again are social benefits. So physical activity and regular physical activity can help with things such as cooperation and teamwork and reducing antisocial behaviours. And not only social behaviours, but then emotional and intellectual benefits as well. A lot of research to show, particularly for boys, that physical activity is a really important aspect of improving their ability to concentrate, to help manage anxiety, all aspects that can contribute to more positive learning experiences as well. In addition to why physical activity is really important, Ireland is in a slippery slope of decline when we start to look at general health in the population. So this was a study that was done across, as you can see, over 2,000 students in 2017. And what it found was only 14% of people aged 10 to 18 were getting the required amount of physical activity they needed per day. So only 14 out of 100 people or students were getting the exercise that they needed. If that continues, Ireland's on track to be the most obese nation in Europe by 2030. What this study also showed is that 80% of students that went through that process and that study didn't have the fundamental movement skills that they should have had by their age. So that is just the basic movement skills that are required to be able to successfully engage in sport. So that's just running, jumping, hopping, kicking, catching, striking. Those basic fundamental movement skills were lacking. In some cases, there was students in high school that didn't have the skills they should have had developed by age 6 or 7. And that's really, really constrictive for those people then that do want to re-enter any sort of sport or any activity if they don't have those fundamentals. You can think about it in a similar way that if you didn't learn to read by the age of 6, 7 or 8, how difficult it would be to re-enter that 13, 14, 15, for example. And there's one last reason, and I'm not going to show it because it is a little bit of a hard-hitting video, but I'll give you the main crux of it. For the recent research from the World Health Organization has recently come out, and it has indicated that this next generation, so all the kids in this school and our children, are going to be the first generation to die younger than their parents because of sedentary lifestyle. They're estimating 5 years that the expected life expectancy of the next generation will decline as a result of sedentary behaviour. So I'm not going to show it because it is a little bit, chokes me up a little bit, to be honest. But just to re-emphasise the importance of movement and everything that we do. So what is it that we can do then, and what are we aiming to achieve? So I mentioned the World Health Organization. They're striving for about 60 minutes per day is the target that is great for the age groups that we're looking at, so primary school and secondary school. What's their meaning in terms of activity? Anything that gets the heart rate up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a 60-minute block, it can be lots of small blocks put together over the course of the day. Sounds like a lot, but it isn't too much when you think about how you can just pick off 5, 10 minutes through there and everything else that occurs. Some tips that might help for those of you or anyone that you know that might be struggling to incorporate physical activity into daily routines or things like that. Access and opportunity is a big one. So providing access to space to run around, green space, sporting equipment, toys that require active use of it, club memberships, playgrounds, all of that sort of thing. An easy way to start to get more minutes and get close to that 60 is just provide that access and opportunity. Look for opportunities for what's called incidental exercise. So if you're at the shopping, if you're at Dundrum, don't take the lift up, try to find some stairs. Can you walk to the shops rather than get the bus or take the car? All of these little incidental exercises can help you accumulate those 60 minutes throughout the day. If you need to, plan ahead and actually block out some time for physical activity. I know a lot of us are very good in terms of structuring what we do in setting homework time and travel time and things like that. If it's really important to you, think about getting physical activity into your scheduling. It might be, become a habit to be 20 minutes after every pickup or 15 before every drop-off or whatever it might be that works for you based on what you've got going on. And if you want to do something that's going to try to stick with your children or other children and things like that, try to find something that's going to be fun for them, because we go back to this list over here, it's a key motivator for most people, and then something that's appropriate for them as well. Based on their age or their development, if it can be fun, if they can be relatively competent at it, the chances of them sticking to it are going to be far higher than them doing something that's a bit boring and maybe a bit too hard for them to achieve. Again, heaps of research and websites out there. There's some really good parent resources on this side here, which is called the Move Well, Move Often, encouraging ways for individual children just to get more active, more information around those fundamental movement skills and things like that, because I didn't touch on that too much. I flew through those 3 areas really quickly, but I do just want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak. As I said at the start, I'll just finish off. I don't profess to know a lot about all of these. Why I chose those 3 were just because they're areas that have genuinely influenced me in what I've been able to do from an employment point of view, and now what I'm trying to do in relation to those 3 red-headed monkeys you saw a little bit earlier. So thanks very much, and I hope there's something useful there for you.